And I'm just going to start like we always do. When you put this much authority and effort and attitude and experience all in the room together at once, you got to start by humbling yourself. So we're going to go to God in prayer and say, Creator God, thank you for bringing us here together today, bringing us here safely. We know that there's some out there that couldn't attend, dealing with family situations, so we pray for them. The main thing with our group here is communication and knowing that the things that we can do together as a group are much greater than any one of us can do alone. And we look to you for that guidance, and we are going to ask you for a good planting season for our farmers and a safe habitat season for our hunters, and keep us focused on being servant leaders just like Jesus would teach us to do. Amen.
Amen.
Greg, thanks for coming today. This is going to be excellent.
Hope so.
The main focus is licking branch magic and ambush setups.
Yeah, I'm really going to talk about ambush setups and some of the techniques I use that are very unique. Nobody else does what I do in the country that I know of. And it really works amazing to pull mature bucks out in daylight. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and a few other things.
Yep, and so I know Greg, we communicated first through the Michigan Buck Pass portal. Some people out here are probably members of that Facebook group. But I reached out to Greg and said, hey, would you ever come and talk to our co-op? Because he was describing on one of the threads his success and how the co-op and the working together and all of that helped so much in his experience. So he seemed like a perfect candidate to me. And I've also heard of Greg on various podcasts. I drive a lot, so I listen to a lot of podcasts. And Big Buck Registry is probably where I heard him first, on there with Jay Scott.
Southern Outdoors as well.
Southern Outdoors.
Yeah.
And with Bill Vale. So if anybody has remembered Bill Vale and some of his secrets and ambush tactics, Greg is one of his circles of masters, I think Bill called it once upon a time.
Yep. Correct.
So let me start with an icebreaker if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Who killed a buck last year? Anybody out here? A lot of hands. Two. Who killed 2 bucks? A few people killed 2 bucks. All right, that's kind of the boring part. Who killed does last year? That's the exciting part. Lots of hands. 2 does, 3 does, 4 does, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's a lot of does. So, yeah, we got to keep that population
5
under
years
control.
ago, we took 16 does off my property, which is 380s. And I'll talk about that maybe if we get time. But
Cool.
doe management, you guys know a lot about doe management, but I could share some things.
I think what you're saying is you'd rather have the stage, not me. So
No.
I'll move out of the way. I've got a food plot book here. There's another friend of mine that authored this little book. So if anybody's interested in taking this and reading it, it's just a co-op copy. So let's just pass it around and share it, whatever. So I'll have it back here too. Otherwise, Greg,
All right.
go for it. Thanks.
First of all, thanks Jason for inviting me to be able to share a morning with fellow hunters. I drove down from Freeland, and my property's over in by South Big Rapids, but it wasn't too beautiful until I got about halfway down. And even though the snow was really nasty, it was a really beautiful drive. It took 2.5 hours to do an 1.5-hour drive, but it was good. All right, so I'm with Pressure Deer Pros. I've been with them for about 5 years, and in lots of ways, I operate on my own because I've been doing experiments in how to draw mature bucks in and be able to shoot them in daylight. I struggled for a lot of years, and how the heck can you shoot them other than luck? And I've moved past that now with some of the techniques I'm going to share with you today. I go all around the country. I've probably been to 10 or 11 states in the last year, doing setups of both habitat and ambush locations on a given piece of property. Anywhere from Missouri to, I was in Mississippi 2 weeks ago, to North Carolina, New York, Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, a lot of Michigan. So I spend a lot of time out in the woods, love it. I'm a retired chemical engineer. Spend a lot of time in the woods. My wife doesn't like that too much, but she tolerates me. I've written 2 books. The first one I'll tell you about is monster whitetail buck magnet, and this is how I developed my property over at Big Rapids. When I first bought that property, there was maybe 10, 15 deer in the property, 2 or 3 bucks. Today I run 18 game cameras all the time on my property. At the end of season this last year I had 40 bucks in the property, all age classes. It is hard to manage that, and we're going to talk about co-ops today a little bit. I'll go through the experience I went through and I'm still going through on that. The other thing this book talks about forming a co-op, how I did it, so it's got some valuable information in it for that. The other thing this book talks about is how do you hold more mature bucks on your property. And it's about breaking your property into quadrants, what I call quadrants, and then making sure that mature buck has everything he needs in that quadrant. If you have, let's say 80 acres and you have a 10-acre food plot, and you have a 25-acre clear cut, so that all those deer go to the bar, right? They all go to the bar, the girls go to the bar, the boys go to the bar, and then one big bad buck, the older one, he may not have the best antlers, but he's got the biggest body weight. He goes in there and he dominates. So if you have 80 acres or more, or even 40, you can be totally controlled by a mature buck, unless you develop the property differently into quadrants. So if there's more than one bar, you can only be at one bar at a time. So what I did on my property, I've got 6 or 7 now quadrants that I've developed, and that's how I did that in that book. All right, then we'll get into some more interesting things. Licking branch magic. I wrote this 2 years ago. I don't know why, I just did. I used to write a lot of training manuals when I worked at Dow Chemical in Midland. How the hell do you use licking branches to pull the mature bucks out in daylight? How do you do that? If you've thought of a way to try a licking branch, I've done it. And I've got a technique I'm going to show you today. It works really, really well, and I'll explain why. But there's things like, what tree branch do you use? Right? Not all woods have good licking branches. If you have farm field edge, I don't care what branch you have hanging out, you'll have a scrape under it. Those are all secondary scrapes. Very difficult to shoot a buck off that. You go into the woods and you find what I call a primary breeding scrape. You're going to have an overhanging branch that's all tore up, broken off, all chewed up, and a big scrape underneath it. So all of us have probably found those. When you find one of those, you get all excited. I do, every time. Because you know a mature buck's been there. I can kill him here. So a lot of people run out, get their climber or put a ladder stand up, and they hunt it and they never kill him. Why? Because that buck chose that location, because he knew that he could come in and scent check it downwind of you and make sure it's safe before he comes in. So my approach that I'm going to go with earlier, which is in this book and explains a great deal how to do this and what branches to use, I put my scrapes where I want them. I use a T-post. Actually have 4 T-posts per spot, 8 branches with splits. That gives me close to 20 branches in one location in a 10-yard area. Heavily concentrated, and I'll show you some of these on here, what happens. The other thing is, I did a study. I set up 10 different trees: basswood, scrub oak, white oak, red oak, beech, and so on and so forth. I did experiment for 2 seasons. And some tree branches were way better than the rest. And basswood, which I have over here in the ground, is by far the best, most effective. Why is that? Because it's really soft wood. There's a Jenkins tree hardness scale, 1 to 145 tree species around the world. Basswood is number 3 or 4, I can't remember exactly now. Softest tree. So they can chew on it, they can leave scent. That's why it works so well. And that's what I use for my setups, because I have a lot of basswood. Scrub oak was 2nd. Other oaks were 3rd and 4th, and so on and so forth. But I'm going to get into some of that, and you'll see some of this in a minute. Interrupt me at any time. I'm going to bore you for another 25 minutes, 30 minutes, and then I'll just do the questions and answers, if that sounds good. All right. Oh, this is basically a bracket design. It looks simple, but I'm telling you what, it freaking works great. There's a lot of neat, interesting things about this, and I'll talk about it in a minute. So I'm going to run through some videos now. These are all off my property. Most of them are from this past season. In there is going to be, let me talk about does. My setups have does on them all year long. They have fawns on them in the summer. They have 1.5 to 2.5-year-old bucks all summer. Mature bucks, 3 years and older, none. So all these deer concentrate that set. If you may think of all the branches I set up in a given location, all those deer are leaving scent all the time on those branches. Those mature bucks are still around. They know it's there, they can smell it. By the time fall comes, September, they start showing up. And I'm going to show you some of those videos. And you're going to see they're in daylight. You're going to see the scrapes that develop. We're not talking about little scrapes, we're talking scrapes that are 8-10 feet. They're huge. And then I've got some bucks that I've harvested in the last couple of years. Okay. This is a scrape setup. It's at night. There's deer bedding here. I've got 20 other videos like this with deer bedded under there. Why are they there? Because there's so much scent. This is an example of September of 2001. A young buck, he's in here hitting a branch. You can see my setups. That's a triple. There's a double over there and a double here. So there's 9 branches on that setup. This is still September last year. Bucks are starting to show up on them, scraping in daylight. Here's another one on the 24th. Same property, different spot. This buck's come in. He knows it's there. He's not going to the branches yet. Here I got setups on both sides. This is in daylight. It's at 7:20 on December on the 2nd. I could have killed either both of those. This is from a couple years ago. I don't know what happened to this buck. I never got a shot at him on this location. I needed an east wind to hunt it. Couldn't hunt it. He's a really nice one. This is him again. I don't have the volume up on that. I got to turn the volume up. There you go. Did you hear that grunt? This guy I killed with a bow on one of my setups. He was 164.
What's he weigh?
240.
Dressed?
Was that dressed? That was not dressed. I think he was 205 dressed. Now I want to stop this one real quick. See how this posts and pivots? Why this works so well is it fights the buck. They absolutely love it. Here's another one. This was this is number 1 or number 2 for this year. We got him. This is in daylight, noon, 1 o'clock. Okay, I talk about does. This is very early. This is the green up in the spring. They're all hitting these licking branches. It works.
Hello, this is Greg from Pressure Deer Pro. I'm out today. It's late March. I'm out setting up some of my licking branches for the fall already in the spring. It's really important to do that so the deer get used to them.
Not true.
So
They need to start
you
using
hear a lot of people talk about doing mock scrapes. I guess you could call these mock scrapes, but I do 5 different setups for making scrapes on my property. I don't make the scrapes. I set up the spots and the branches so the deer will use them and make their own scrapes. So I don't scrape the ground and doctor up the scrape with scent and the branches. But this particular one, you can see I've set up using one of these units that I made and designed. And I set this up in 5 minutes. Got to have the right tree branch to set up. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different licking branches on this particular setup. So what do I have here? I have a kill plot. You can see I got clover. It's already greening up in late March in Michigan. We got a stand across over there in a pine tree. This is adding another dimension to this hunting spot. Right? So I'm going to have 3 of these. I'm actually going to have close to 20 licking branches in a line here. Behind me is thick cover. That's a staging area. It's all full of rubs. When the bucks come out, they're going to come out to this edge. And if you notice, there's an edge of pine trees here and brush. That is an edge. You have to have an edge to get scrapes to occur for licking branches to work. Licking branches are all about communication for deer. They use them all year round. That's why I'm setting them up now. They will start to use these. I'll have to replace those branches in the fall because they'll be too brittle and the bucks will snap them all off. But that's no problem. I'm going to come back in September, put new branches on these. It takes 2 minutes to do it. All right, so with that in mind, I wanted to tell you a little bit about licking branches, the magic of the licking branch. If you want to learn how to do these, come to our school, Pressure Deer Pros. We will teach you, I will teach you hands-on how to do all 5 of the approaches I take to developing licking branches, including this one. As you can see, it works pretty darn well, I think, anyway. So give us a call, Pressure Deer Pros. Thanks.
Are those 8 or 10 foot T-posts?
I'll talk about that. Great question. 7 foot minimum. But if you're ground sand, you need 8 footers. So you're going to see now more advanced scraping. This is late September. He's not going over there. The little one is. The big ones don't start hitting it till later in October. All these are in daylight. What made him jump? Game camera. He heard that sucker.
It's Greg, Pressure Deer Pros. If you are doing setups like this, with ambush planning, using the wind properly, and in the right locations with the right branches, etc., 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 you're really missing a game changer opportunity. It's Greg, Pressure Deer Pro. You can learn all about this in great detail with strategies and everything
What a joker.
by getting my book, Open Branch Magic, if you're interested. Thank you.
Right, so this is a young buck. I ended up killing a big one you're going to see a picture of in a minute, coming through this spot on the 31st of October with a bow.
What's the age on that one, you think?
That's a 3-year-old. See the gut on him? He's big. Big body. He doesn't have, I don't have great antlers where my property is. I don't have the genetics. But he's a 3-year-old.
You pretty sandy up there?
Yes, very sandy.
That's why.
Yeah, very sandy. Oh, this is the guy that I killed.
That's got good names.
And yeah, he's the one I killed at that location, and I'm going to go through, I'm going to lay out on here how I laid that out. I laid it out in March, and I killed him in October 31st. Same spot, there's licking branches there, you can see them. I mean, everybody's got good bucks, but I want to see, these are in daylight pictures. These can all be killed if they're in the right spot. Okay, this is a really cool video. It's a nice big 8-point, but what's cool about it is it's December 2nd, 2 days after rifle season, whatever year that was, 2 or 3 years ago. I didn't go out that day, because rifle season, the deer are all spooked, they're not going to be moving. He went to 2 of my setups at 9:30 in the morning. This is 9:30 in the morning, and then he went 400 yards down through a creek bottom, up on top through a food plot to another setup. I had him on camera both places. It shocked me. Anyway, okay. All right. Okay. Close that. Now
So obviously you're not worried that they can't rub the post? That's not a big deal.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a great point. Every once in a while, you'll find a scrape that's got a tree rub there. Typically, I like to call those territorial areas. If you have a really big buck, and he's got his bedding area right over here, and he comes out into this transition zone, he will rub a tree and scrape right at the same time. He's doing it because he's frustrated. So that's where you'll see that. I never worry about him hitting on my post. They don't even pay attention to the post. What's important, and I'm talking about when we do the setup, is the fact that they can get under it. There's no debris around. It's at the right height, 5 foot. The bottom of the branches has to be at 5 foot. Those are the keys that make this work. Okay. These are just some of the bucks that killed him off a setup at 10 yards.
How old is he?
He's 4. But this is not, so these are more scrape pictures. I mean, it speaks for itself. That's all done by that deer. I did not rake it out. I didn't do any of that. All I did is kill the vegetation. You have to have dead vegetation underneath it. So that's the one I got this year on the 31st. I'm going to draw out how I ambushed him.
What was his age?
5. I passed him at 4. 4 times. Everybody's seen rubs. I love big rubs. I don't know what's next. Let's see here. That's 3 years ago. This one was 164.
How old was he?
He's 5. He's got a great mass. Question? That was 11. Both ones that I shot there were 11s. The other one was 10 point. Habitat. Got to have good habitat. There's a lot of people out there that can do habitat. But I guess I like to think I'm different. That's another one I got this year. That's the second one. I'll tell you the story on that one. I forgot where I was going with that now. Yeah, I got to stop this thing. It's going to. Okay, vertical drop licking branches are really effective. So, another great picture. I'll stay on the vertical drops. Wish I could stop that. So you take basswood. That was a basswood branch that you saw with the big heart-shaped leaves. You zip tie those into a pine tree. Pine trees are not good licking branch trees. Although white pines, you find scrapes under them. But the problem is they don't work for drawing because of scent, because they got pine scent, right? And that's that other big one that we got. We got him with the rifle. All the other ones were with a bow, but Randy got that one, my good buddy. I love this picture. I put it in just because I love this picture. It's off my game camera. I run 2 game cameras at every location. One that sends me satellite photo or phone across the phone, and then the other one takes good videos and pictures. Once again, does. There's 6 does here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 does, all in that one licking at once. Another thing about having so many licking branches is if a bachelor group comes in, let's say there's 7. I had 7 3-year-olds and older come into a group, and everyone went to a branch. It was in September. They hadn't broken up yet. But those are the key. They leave the scent and end up making it a real draw. Now back to vertical drops. So let's say you have a field edge and you have a bow stand right there, right? And let's run through these again. If you want to have a way to pull a buck out of heavy cover, on the edge of that, do vertical drops with basswoods. All you do is zip tie them. You got to get a Y, put it over the pine branches, zip tie it in 5 feet. Leave the leaves on. The leaves are important. That video where the buck, December 2nd, I don't know if you noticed, he had his face shoved right up into those branches. Why was he doing it? He's leaving scent. That's why I replaced the branches in late August on all my setups. I have 7 setups on my property. That's roughly 60 branches I go cut, basswood branches. I want those leaves on there through October and into early November. The does eat them, but they also all put scent on them. You have a higher surface area compared to a single scrape, primary scrape that a buck made. He's got one little branch there. That's it. These are 100 times got more scent on them. That's why they work so effectively. Here you go. So this, see how that was mowed back there on the front? My buddy mowed that. That was a mistake. I didn't explain to him what I was doing. So I had tilled that where the ground was underneath the vertical drops. I wanted that hard edge. I wanted them to be able to step out of the cover into that branch where I can shoot him, and he's got tall weeds right here. So it's a security. Once he mowed that, it didn't work because it was too open. My setups, and when I do ambush locations, it's all about how do I set this up where a buck can scent check it first before he comes in, and then he doesn't have to expose himself. If you do that and use that mentality, you'll get a lot more, you'll see a lot more mature animals. Okay, I was going to talk about habitat. Don't remember what it was. Oh well. All right.
Greg, when we talked the other day,
Yes.
it seemed like you were saying a lot of people can develop habitat, but you got to be able to ambush the deer in the habitat you built.
Yeah, so I've been to a lot of properties where, for example, somebody went in and suggested to them they should do hinge cutting and all this other stuff, or do a clear cut, and they did a 10-acre square clear cut. If you're going to go in and do a clear cut for habitat, you don't want to do a 10-acre square clear cut. You want to do 4-acre or 3-acre clear cuts and put them apart and put them strategically where you can ambush them, leaving the bedding area, go into the food source. So when I look at a property, I don't do anything on any property until I've thought about how's this gonna help me ambush that 5-year-old. So many properties are laid out and there's no way to hunt them. I've been to a property where, here in Michigan, where this guy could grow, I wish I could grow stuff like this guy could. He had plots that were phenomenally beautiful. He couldn't kill any deer off them. Because he couldn't get in or out of the stand without getting busted. We all like to hunt. October 2nd, 3rd, you go in, you get in your stand, you run deer out of the food plot, you get up to this tree. Yep, some young bucks come out. It's not the right time yet because the mature bucks aren't really out yet. You get down, you just run a deer out of the food plot again, twice the first day. You do that 3-4 times, they all know you're coming. You're done. So if you're gonna hunt a food plot, you have to have an entrance and exit. It's easy and works. Not easy. Easy's not the right word. I've walked miles, a quarter mile, to get into a stand so I didn't spook the deer. And it works if you do that. Okay, what was I gonna talk about next? Okay, who wants to be the volunteers to do a setup? They basically slide over here and they spin. Then you got a set screw here. Once you get the branches on, then you set to where they're coming out. So you guys just stand calmly for a couple seconds while I talk about this. If you're gonna do a setup like this, you have to have a hard edge. That wall is a hard edge. What I want to have happen, when I come walking through the brush into a little opening, I want to step out and say, holy crap, look at those licking branches. Because they're sticking out from a hard edge. It could be switchgrass, it can be autumn olive bushes, it could be tree line. You got to have a hard edge, that's what makes it work. The branches need to be 5 to 6 feet long. And you come out so the deer can get under them. They love that. And the height for the branches is 5 foot. You also will have some that you want to have dip lower because fawns love to hit, they love to do. They see mom go hit the branch, they want to do it too, but they can't reach them because they're 5 foot. So I always have some branches that are lower than that. One last thing. In nature, this is the way branches grow. Upward towards the sun. Flip them over. So they're down facing the deer, so they're easier for them to hit and leave scent on. If you think about leaves being on these, then they can put their face right in there. If they're facing up, they can't. Every time you put one of these setups together, it's like a little art project. If you guys are all artsy people, probably not. You know, you put the branch up here and you turn it to where you think you got it the way you want it, and then you put 2 screws in. Here's the screws. You guys go for it. We'll see how it goes. It's actually a lot of fun. So that's pretty good. Yeah, you're on the wrong side, so you guys have to switch. Now when you're putting those screws in, you only put it into your hand one time. After that, you never do it again. I've done that. And you always put the inside screw in first. Why?
Holds
It holds the thing, he doesn't have to hold it after that. So I know that because when you're doing them by yourself, sometimes I am. Yep, just like that.
Want me to put both of them in or just?
Please, yeah. Oh yeah, just one, it's good. And then put the other one up and there you go. And people can see what we're talking about. Basswood, right now they have a little red bud on the bottom. That's how you can tell that it's basswood. So this is a single branch, but you got 3 here at the end. This is a double branch. This is really what you want. You get more branches per side. Now if you have, so what I typically do is put 2 on one side of the opening and 2 on the other side, perpendicular to the tree stand. Because that way, when the buck is on these branches, he's broadside.
Good.
So
Thank you.
were you instituting cutting and putting up the branches after mature leaves? You're talking about late May?
No, so I like to set these up in March or April,
But
just like this.
So you set them up in the spring, but then in the
Yes.
fall, are you
I'll get to that.
full of leaves?
Yes. So the does and the fawns and the young bucks are all hitting this all summer. I want leaves on there in the fall, plus they get brittle, which is your question. So the end of August, I don't want to do it in the middle of August because it's too hot. Then the leaves might fall off. So I do it late August, I go cut the basswood branches.
Basswood kind of, they start to turn brown at a certain
Well,
point.
as soon as you cut them off, they'll turn brown. Just like an oak, if you're going to oak your tree stands in, you should be oaking your ladder stands in so they can't be seen very well. You cut them off in late August, they stay on the branches and they turn brown. Yep. So, it's important to change the branches because the bucks will snap these off if you have good antlers, and it gives you more surface area for the leaves, for when they stick their faces up in them. Now what happens is, where's this going to break at? It's going to break right here every time. Have I had fresh branches busted? You bet I have. I had a young buck use 3. He went into the same setup, broke off 7 branches twice in the season. Just went in there and did it for fun, I guess. Never had it happen since. But every once in a while you get a branch broke, all you do is you take the screws out, slide it back, screw it back in. That way you keep the one that's centered on there. Okay. Okay. Why is it the basswood's so good? I wrote about this in the book. A friend of mine says, well, they make beehives out of basswood. I said, okay, well, why do they do that? He didn't know. I said, you know any beehive guys? He said, yeah, I got a friend that does beehives. And I said, well, how many beehives does he do? I'm gonna make sure he knows what he's talking about. He said, 2,000. Okay, he knows what he's talking about. So I call a guy, I talk to him, and he says, well, yeah, basswood doesn't have any odor. Oh, well, that makes total sense then. The bees don't like to have any odor. That's how they recognize their hive and go to it. Same thing with deer. They want to leave their scent on here. And if it's a pine branch, it camouflages their odor. It influences their odor. Basswood doesn't have any odor. I was down in Mississippi 2 weeks ago doing a property down there. And I'm leading to type of tree. And I couldn't find any scrapes on this guy's property. There were tucks all over, very few scrapes. It wasn't conducive to scraping. He didn't have any good setups. Well, I finally found one, and it was on a chestnut tree. I got chestnuts, but they're little, so I'm not cutting any of them. I want them to get big. But chestnut, so I looked up, the only scrape I could find was chestnut. I looked it up on that hardness scale, it was number 7, softest. So if you have chestnuts, those will work really well, I believe. I haven't trialed them, but I think they'll work really well based on that. Okay.
Who's got basswoods growing on their property?
Yeah, I'm struggling right now walking around the property. I can't visualize any basswood.
There's lots of basswoods everywhere. You just gotta find them. They're big heart-shaped leaves.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I have
Yep.
quite a few that I planted,
Uh-huh.
and they grew nicely.
Yep.
And
They're very
perhaps-
fast growers. When you
they're
cut off
perhaps,
branches, in 3 years you can cut them again.
I don't know if I got mine, they're about 10 years old, but they're about 30 feet tall.
There's another one, it's called, I call it scrub oak. I really don't know what kind of oak it is.
They
It's a
say that's
gnarly
bear.
oak. It's gnarly. They don't get super big, but it's a softwood.
I just looked it up, they say a bare oak and
Yeah,
scrub
and they
oak are
work
the same.
really, really well. They work really, really well. Anyway, okay. All right, let me draw you the ambush location for that drop time buck I killed. All right, this is north. I'll move out of the way. Any of you guys have shoulder problems? My rotator cuff in this arm is shot. I can barely lift my arm up. I've had surgery on it twice.
Are you a crossbow guy then?
I have to be. Let me talk about that. You know, I love compound bow shooting. I did it, I got contests and everything with one buddy that died of cancer. But, you know, I love shooting compound bow. But what a crossbow does for you, it allows you to get out of the zone. 40 yards when you're at 40 yards, all my ambush spots are set up at 40 to 45 yards. Because I'm out of the zone. My hunt is more enjoyable because I don't go into a panic when he's right there. Right? So that's why I set up my spots 40 yards back to be out of the zone. So crossbows allow us to do that. Love crossbows. All right. So what I had was property line. That's north. And here is an acre food plot on the neighbors. And then up here is 400 acres of farm fields, 400 acres. And this is, in my property goes like this. All right, there's a creek that comes down through here like so. And I just basically had open woods with some grassy areas. And one of the first habitat changes I said to myself is I got to make a bedding area here. The deer are moving through here, there's nothing holding them, there's no bedding. So I don't like red. Let me try blue. So I did a 5-acre clear cut of poplars. Oops, well, that took care of that marker. I hope it wasn't your favorite. So I put this, so this was 6 years ago I did this to create bedding. And what ended up happening, this is about 150 yards right here, across ways of that bedding area. Obviously the deer are coming to this food plot of the neighbors and out to the big fields every morning and every night. They're coming back and forth. That's the movement pattern to the north. So I said, okay, I put a stand over here, blowing this way, and I did kill a nice buck here, but it wasn't good. So what I ended up having here is deer runs, all coming out, all along this, right? So how are you going to hunt that? This is 150 yards. I don't know what run they're going to be on. Okay, so I do my primary scrape setup right here. So I put in my 4 brackets. And then I say to myself, okay, how am I going to be wind safe here? I can't blow any of these directions, I'm going to get busted. The key thing is you have to blow at the mature buck. What that means is you have to kind of blow at them but not have them scent you. You can do it through elevation advantage, through drop-offs, or through barriers. A barrier could be a marsh that they don't like to go through because it's too mucky. Blow right down the edge of the barrier. Or you put a fence in. You can make a barrier that they'll go around. Deer are lazy. If they're not pressured at the time you're hunting, they're going to go around the fence. So there's things like that. So here's my barrier, this is a drop-off. This is a 25-foot drop-off right here. So this is where I set up, right here. This is where I put right in the tree line. Hemlocks, so there's good pine branches. I set up right here, and I hunt this with this wind and this wind. And then these angles too. This wind is not that good because they can't scent check it. They'd have to come over here, but they will. So I hunted it with these winds. I hunted the stand 4 times. I'll try to speed this up, this has got to be boring. I hunted it 4 times. First time, I saw 11 deer and 4 bucks. Second time I saw 2 fawns. The third time I saw 26 deer, 11 bucks, and all but 1 were within range to shoot them. Why? These runs petered out. They all started coming over here because of this setup. All those 20 branches, all those deer hitting those. Why they bed there? Because that's what it was. All the bed there, they bed there because there's so much scent. It's like a bedding area to them. They feel safe there. So what this does is if you put these setups in, it pulls the deer to you. So what happened on the 31st? Okay, let me talk about mature bucks. Maybe you guys probably know all this stuff, but first deer off the field typically is the mature buck, half hour before daylight. If you're walking your stand half hour before daylight and you bump a deer and he snorts really loud, it's a mature buck. You just ruined your hunt. I always get in stand an hour before daylight, so I'm there before he is. But he beds down early, and he gets up at 10:30, 11 o'clock, goes for a walk, go get to drink, goes hit scrape setups, goes to look at the girls, follows the girls, whatever he's going to do. He does that about 10:30. 10:40, I look up, and I've seen a handful of deer that morning. Out comes 3 does in a line, just like this. And right behind them was a big guy with a drop tine. They didn't come into here, but this whole thing is the reason they came there, because they had been doing it safely. So I shot him right here, 42 yards. I had 3 seconds. He was in the opening 3 seconds, but that scope did it for me. I arranged it on the last deer that went through because I knew he'd be on the same run. Okay, so that's why I set this up. I knew I had a great wind. If you're going to put a stand in, you got to have a good wind plan. What winds am I going to hunt this with? I'm going to hunt this with north winds, southeast winds. Those are my primary best winds. Every spot you hunt, you got to have a plan for it on what winds you're going to hunt and why. Yes?
What wind was it when you killed that buck?
It's interesting that you asked that because I would have hoped to support what I'm telling you, it would have been out of the north because they would have come into the wind. They tailwinded. The wind was out of the southeast. They tailwinded out of the cover. Because this is fairly open, but intermittent cover, they can walk through it and see. That's why they did that in the daylight at 10:40 in the morning, because they can see. They will tailwind if they can get good visibility. If you think of a buck going into a clear cut, if he doesn't scent check that first, there's a coyote in there, he's gonna get bit in the ass, right? After about 3-4 times you get bit in the butt, you're not gonna go out, you're gonna scent check it first. So that's how all they learn that.
That makes
Okay.
sense. I see a lot of tail winding, but that makes sense because a lot of what we hunt is open.
Yeah. Neighborhood co-ops. Okay. Where do I start? So there's 15 neighbors around my property. All sizes from 10 acres to 15 acres to 80 acres, 40 acres, all the way around me. One's a 60. So what did I do? I met with every one of them. I went and met them, told them who I was, told them I wanted to develop this area, our section as a better whitetail hunting, wanted to get older bucks. It means we have to pass bucks. I said, we will be passing all 1, 2, and 3-year-olds. And they said, well, we'll buy, they almost all said, we'll buy into that. They're giving me the speech back, but they weren't gonna buy into it. So, 2-3 years go by, I'm starting to see better deer because they can't shoot them all. Right, I got good habitat, I'm developing the habitat. So 3 years go by, and I get a phone call from one of them. You know what, Greg? We thought you were full of crap. We thought you were just doing that in order to shoot the bucks, so you would get the bucks. But you haven't shot a single rifle, we haven't heard a single rifle shot in 3 rifle seasons. I said, yeah, that's right, we haven't been shooting them. And then they started buying ahead. Okay. Since then, it's developed. You've seen the kind of animals I've got on the property and how it's developing. So some of the things you have to think about, you have to talk to people. Even if they're not your favorite neighbor, you got to go ahead and try to bury the hatchet and say, hey, let's try to, we only got to do it, you really only got to do it 1 year. If everybody passes 1.5-year-olds, for example, for 1 year, now you're hunting 2.5-year-olds and older. Do the same thing, so you just got to be more selective for 1 year. Shoot more does. If we have time, I'd like to talk about does a little bit. So, the neighbors bought into it and started shooting. So the neighbors to the south, the guy had owned that property 19 years. The biggest buck he shot was a 2.5-year-old. Since then, he's shot 2 5-year-olds. Now, I've got people convinced that you can't shoot one every year and you can't expect to. Okay? What's important to me is that we get the biggest ones every year. Right? It's my property. I want to get the biggest ones every year. That's what I work hard for. And this year we did. We got the 3 target biggest bucks in the section. And they got a 4-year-old on each side this year. So here's some things that happen. You get frustrated. I told a couple of guys here a story. There was at the end of the season, in rifle season, they shot 7 3-year-olds around my property. All of them coming off the property. 7. I was devastated. I was very upset because there was one that was really, really cool and I didn't want him to be shot. And they were all shot. So I sent out a text to the group and said, we're done. You guys know we average 1.5 to 2 bucks a year out of 4 guys. We're going to start shooting 80 a year. It's going to go back the way it used to be. And I didn't say anything else. I wasn't going to do that because I'm working too hard and it's too much fun. And what you see when you're hunting is amazing when you have these older bucks. So after about a month and a half, I started getting texts from everybody. Okay, we understand, we're in, we won't shoot the 3-year-olds. And the last 2 years they haven't. So it's been really remarkable. So one last story on the co-op. There was a young man, he was 22 years old. And I liked him and everything, and he would shoot a buck and he'd come on the property and I'd go track it with him, get it out, and it'd be a small one. Well, there was a 13-point, a 2.5-year-old 13-point. The best genetics we'd had or I've ever seen. And I sent it around to everybody, please don't shoot this deer. It's going to create better genetics for us in the future if it can breed. And it ain't going to breed till it's at least 3 or 4 probably, right? So this kid shot it. He had 13 points. He wasn't anything fancy, but he had a lot of points. And he would have been great when he was 5. It bothered me. I was upset about it. Because he lied. He said he didn't kill it. Somebody came to me and said, yeah, so-and-so shot that buck. Really? So I asked him, did you shoot that buck? He said, nope, but he did. He's a good kid, right? He knew so anyway, that's the kind of stuff you have to look past. You can't get yourself focused on one deer and worry about it. I was really wrong. I should not have even asked him. I shouldn't even have made a big deal about it. I learned a real lesson out of that. You talk about your prairie started with. That's what I'm talking about. There's a lot more to this than just killing animals, it really is. Questions on the co-op? Oh, you have to be willing to have your neighbors shoot the good bucks. You have to be open to that. But
Well,
if
that's
you,
kind of what you want, because then they're really in.
yeah, it's true, it's true.
Because that's the problem I have,
Yeah.
is nobody's killing anything.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed in one of the videos, there was a buck that had a weird, had like 7 on one side and had this weird thing on the other side. 14-year-old boy got that one, 4-year-old deer. I said, he's on the hit list. Yeah, that kid, you should have seen him. He was like a kid in a cancer. He was so excited, right? But when you're shooting these little ones, after a while it gets old. For me, it got old.
So for us, Greg, a couple
Yeah.
things, some statements that have been made by participants throughout the years. One was by one of our founders that isn't here today, Mike McGuire. He said a few years back, we established this in 2019, by the way, so we're pretty new. But he said a few years back, he said, we're just too efficient at killing the 2- and 3-year-olds. And that's a
Absolutely.
true statement. Like, everybody in this room can kill 2- and 3-year-olds every year. I am sure of that. And so in order to get anything like you're showing, we
Right.
just gotta take our privilege basically and say, we're gonna lay off. We're just not gonna do it, because we don't need to.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that we had a speaker last fall, I think it was John, come out, and he brought his mounts because we had a better opportunity to display them and everything, and they were big bucks. But he said he likes to think of a hunter being known by the bucks he passes, not by the one he kills. And I thought
Great
that was
message.
really wise too.
It's a great message.
So we don't have any rules per se in this co-op, and we've never even discussed anything like you're saying, where we're gonna not shoot 3-year-olds. I mean, everybody's free to make their own decision. I just hope everybody thinks about it a little bit and recognizes that, especially with what you're saying, I feel like sometimes we're the ones that are preventing our own success. Again, just based on what Mike was saying, that we're so darn efficient at killing.
And you'll always have a handful of people browns down, right? We've all used that term, browns down.
It is for me,
Yeah.
unless they have antlers.
And standards are different for each person. I mean,
That's right.
Yep. It's like what you said, I shot tons of small bucks when I was younger, and I just got to the point where, I'm to the point now where I've shot lots of 3.5-year-old bucks. The buck that I shot this year was a 3.5-year-old buck. I'm ready to shoot something bigger.
Yep.
A lot of people haven't even seen a mature buck,
Right.
so they don't even know what it looks like.
So that's a great point you make.
Connor set a goal for himself this past year. He wasn't gonna shoot any little bucks, and he didn't. He shot one biggest buck he ever killed.
Awesome. That's awesome. We all set up with the winds in our face, right? And that means the buck's gonna come in behind you most likely. So a lot of the bucks you don't see that are on your property because they come in behind you and they bust you and they sneak away. During the daylight, mature bucks don't snort at you. At night, they'll snort like crazy. It's amazing how loud they are. It's almost scary.
And you know it, because you know that deep throat.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
I got a question. So if you had a small spot on a small property with no trees, would you ever use a blind, or would you do all natural blind out of setup?
So rifle blinds, tower blinds, ground
I'm
blinds.
talking about for bow.
For bow,
For
yeah.
bow.
I believe they're a deterrent to shooting big bucks. It doesn't mean you can't, because it happens. But for example, we have a spot we call the sanctuary spot. The stand sits right on the bank of the creek, and we can look to a flat down below, shoot down there. I'm going to develop that this year by putting a 1/4 acre food plot with brackets right there. And then up top is a flat. We're getting older, so we said we got to start making ourselves spots so we don't have to be climbing trees, because I'm 64 and my friends are 65 and 66. So you got to camo them in, that's my opinion. How do you do that? I put a whole bunch of pine boughs over it, and every year I add a few more. As long as I can see through the windows, it does help.
Yeah, I have a spot. I can't really get a permanent blind in there, but and I've mostly been hunting with the kids and mostly shooting does.
Yeah.
But it's a good big buck spot, and I've been using a ground blind. But and I brush it in pretty well. But it seems like every deer, they know, and even I try to keep human scent out of there. But it seems like every deer knows
So,
that's a human there. And so this year, my plan is to set up a little ambush pocket where I can sit on the ground and, stay out of there and then just hunt from the ground but brushed in.
Yeah,
You know, where I won't be seen.
Let me tell you a quick story and it might help you. So the 10 point was the first picture of me. It's a nice 10 point. We hunted this up on a flat. So you go down through a creek, up 2-track onto a flat. And we would follow 2-track to the bow stand and you get in there. And almost every time you hunt it, you see a tail. Almost every time. We never killed a big buck there. So I said to myself, well, I'm going to go differently. I'm going to come around the other side. I'm going to come up the creek and I'm going to go up the bank. And I had to literally crawl my way up and get right in the tree. I killed him that night. So that spot you're talking about, your ground blind's probably good, but you must be able to see you when you're getting to it.
No, I go through the cattails, and I mean,
so you got cover.
I have deer come out. There's no, like I said, there's no trees for tree stands. It's all brushy.
Yeah.
I mean, we have deer come out. I mean, you'll be in there 5 minutes, and it's a spot where it doesn't matter how early you go, you risk bumping small deer there. They're there. And even I run a trail camera there, and you'll see the deer looking at the ground blind, and I'll have mature bucks come in, or at least 3-year-olds, but usually they come through once. And never again, except I will have them occasionally during the peak of the rut. Occasionally they'll follow a doe in daylight, and a lot of 2-year-olds in daylight, but I think that blind is keeping the bigger bucks
So it
out
must
of
be
there.
too visible. I don't know if you can tuck it back in further. Like, for
Yeah.
example, if it's cattails, you can put a tripod stand in there. There's things like that you can do.
Yeah.
When you step back, I was talking to guys, if you can step back and look at your ladder stand and see it, it's not done right. You're gonna get, the mature bucks are gonna know it's there. You gotta camo it in. Same thing, if you stand back and you can tell that's a blind there,
Yeah,
it needs more work. Artificial Christmas trees, put a big tree, drag it over there, cover it up, I don't know, but you
Yeah.
can do things like that. It's really important.
yeah, it's tricky to get
It
it.
sounds like a great spot.
Yeah, it's tricky to get, because you brush it in, but then, you know, there's a windstorm, it messes up the branches, if it snows,
Is it a wet area?
oh yeah, yeah. But there's a couple spots where I can make myself virtually hidden with like a couple tiny shooting lanes, because I do have a scrape set up there. So, you know, I think I can set it up where I can sit in there and they won't see me.
The other question I have is, what wind are you hunting it with? And why did you pick that spot? You want to go along the edge and see where the runs are coming out, map it out. So heavy run here, heavy run here. There's no runs here. Why? Because I got a bog behind me.
That's what I go through.
Make sure you set up to where your winds go in, where the deer aren't going to be. Because they
Yeah.
could be setting you back in the cover. If it's open woods, that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're circling around probably.
Yeah, it could be the older bucks are smelling me when I'm in there. I mean, I try to scent it where it's a crosswind to where I think they're bedding.
Yeah.
But
It's deer, it's pretty hard to bust or beat a deer's nose. They're
Yeah.
they're good at catching us because they're out there all the time, right?
oh yeah,
What about using the licking branches? You're on an edge, you talk about having an edge.
Yep,
And where we particularly, we have a lot of edges, but they're crop fields.
yes.
So what about getting in the woods where you have an opening and using an edge within?
So, okay. You can see on some of my setups, it was very clear that, so what attracts the first deer to come to a licking branch, any licking branch? It's visual. They see it. They walk up to it. That's why the hard edge is so important. After the first deer hits it, there's two things, visual and then scent left by the previous deer. So you're trying to build upon that. So if you put one of these in open woods, it's really hard for that to get a lot of action because it's hard for it to jump out at them, so they see it really well. So what I would typically do is if I'm going to try to set them up inside the wood line, I would down a couple trees. I'd hinge them over, make a hard edge, and then have nothing. No branches laying there, clear it right out, and the branches come out so it's more visible.
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Something like that.
You can do that.
Small, like real small, not a big,
Yep.
big area. I'm
Yep.
talking.
Yep, so you can see how big this is and how these branches come out. If you have 4 of these, you can imagine, you know, the other ones would be, the gentleman in the cart coat there would be, that would be where the other branches come this way and there'd be another one here. So it's big, but not big.
Right, that's what I'm talking, yeah.
How far off the edge are you putting them? are you putting your setups? How far out?
Okay, the T-post goes in the hard edge,
Right in it.
right in it,
Okay.
right on it, right in it, so that the branches come out into the opening. Yep.
Because that's typically how they are in a crop edge.
Yep.
Yeah, the crops.
So crop edges are a real challenge because they're what I call secondary scrapes. The deer are in there eating that night in that field, they chose that field based on the wind, they went into the wind and ended up in that field. Oh, there's a branch, they hit it. Oh yeah, I remember hitting it the other day, hit it again. But they aren't gonna necessarily go to that as a destination point. These setups that I do become what I call a communal attraction to the deer herd. These are used by the deer herd, not a mature buck. But he can't go by it without getting sucked in. That's what makes it so fun. He thinks he's safe, because I've only set these up in a wind-safe setup for ambush.
And where do we get the brackets, or how do you get them or make them?
Okay, I always hate this part. So, I do sell the brackets. I pay a guy $30 to make them. He's got to cut all the pieces, weld them, sandblast, prime, and paint it. So I sell them $30. I sell them for $35. I make $5, so I sell them. You need 4 of them for a spot, but they last forever. So, do you want to spend $125? I got them for you. I can get them if you want.
Nice.
My business cards are over here. These books I sell for $50 each on my webpage, but yeah, both of them for $50 if anybody wants books. So $50 total for both books. So half off, since you guys are all here. If you want books, if not, that's fine. Yes.
How do you handle your own scent when you're talking about?
Okay, great question. I wear rubber boots. Let me ask a quick question, because this is one's always bothered me a long time. Why, when I wear rubber boots and they never have anything on them, no scent, why do the deer know I walk through there? Haven't you had that happen to you?
Yeah.
You walk through the
Ground
sun, bitch,
disturbance.
stop there. How the hell did he know I was there? There's no scent on my boots.
Ground disturbance.
Ground disturbance, that's exactly why.
Bipedal
What was that?
steps. You're a human.
Yeah, you need to get up on, you need to get some, yeah, anyway.
Stilts with
Oh,
fake.
somebody asked me a question, I think I skipped it. Did I get your question? Who was it?
Well, just about your
The
own
scent.
control,
Oh, yeah, scent.
Wearing gloves when you
Yeah.
cut your branches.
So when I set these up in March, I'm freaking touching them everywhere, I don't care, right? But if it's in August, I'm putting branches in, they're already coming in, right? So I take these 2 screws out, I take these, I throw them in the back. I still want that scent there. And that, I've got rubber gloves on then, or leather gloves. I'm being careful not to touch the ends. So you do, in late August, when you replace these, you do want to try to be scent free, if at all possible.
Now, when you replace them, do you do them all at once, or do you do like half to keep the scent still there?
Do it all.
Until they start?
Do it all. They know it's there, they'll come in immediately. If I do a setup like this in March, for example, this month, I'll have deer in there in 2 days. They come in and they can't help it, they just want to chew on them. Plus his buds taste good, I think, I don't know. There's something else I can tell you. Anyway, okay. Yes,
Earlier, you showed a picture and it was a vertical
vertical
licking
drop.
branches.
Yep.
But then you also, this setup, when do you use
Okay.
one versus the other?
These are a different application. Those are to really make it be a hub. When I do vertical drops, they're typically going to be on the edge of a food plot where the cover line is. I could use these just as well, but vertical drops for some reason are really effective because it's right here to them and they can get under here and they can spin and they just love them. So they work really well. Yeah, so it's really what you really want to do as a setup. I don't set up on food plots anymore hardly at all. I kill them on the way to the food plots. That way I can get in and out. I do this ambush setup like that, just like this one I drew, right? I can get in and out of here. Look at my entrance. I walk the bottom of the creek going up, pop right up, get in that stand. I don't spook anything. I got quite a walk to do to get over to there, but once and then I get down, I'm down and I'm out of sight just like that. Now, not every property has the elevation changes that yes.
Do you or anybody else you know use grapevines for vertical?
Yeah, sure. I've got a place in my property where I got a rope between some trees and I've got 3 grapevines hanging on their V. They've been there for 10 years, they're still using them. But they're secondary. A grapevine's not going to get you the scent that you have with leaves on it. It's just a different type. If you want to give your buck something to do, guys like Tony the Pratt, he'll tell you to pull branches down everywhere. The more the more scrapes you have in property, the better. I'm actually moving away from that concept.
Yeah, you kind of,
Where I'm at now is this is what I do, and they don't got anything else. I cut them all off. And it's amazing how much they hammer these things. And what's also interesting is if you have, because of my quadrants that I do in one book there, I can have 4 or 5 shooters on my property, and they all go to different ones. They establish their own territory. I'll have one hit 2 of them, this one 3 of them, this one 1. It's really interesting to look at your data on your cameras. Yep.
now how often do those get broke off during peak use?
I would say, so if I get in the stand and I see this branch is busted off, but I still got 6 other branches, I stay out. So if it's late, if it's seeking phase, so, okay, let's talk about this. When should you be hunting your licking branches? Before the first doe comes in heat. That's when they're the most effective. Because the bucks are frustrated, they're going around, they're scraping, they're rubbing trees, that's when they're gonna come into these in daylight the most. So I could get into the moon calendar, I hunt by the moon big time. I hunt dark period and first quarter moon. Those are for sure times when I hunt. First quarter moon, the movement activity for fish and all that is about a half hour before dark. First quarter moons, I always hunt that day and the day before, and I've killed on those days, many, many times. Dark periods when you have no moon at night. It's dark at night, so they move during the day.
Yeah, they don't like full moon, too bright.
Full moon, you could literally go get in the stand at 10 o'clock and hunt till 2.
Yeah.
That's been mine, and I've killed them at 12:30 many times on full moons. But I can't go in at 10, I gotta get in an hour before daylight, so it makes a long sit. Yeah. Okay, Doe Harvest. If you're developing your habitat, thank you. If you're developing your habitat, you gotta pay attention to does. Because the more, let's say, I've done 10 clear cuts in 12 years on my property, ranging in size from 4 acres to 2 acres to 20
How big's your
20
property
acres.
overall?
250 acres. Okay, so I got a lot of browse coming up, and I'm letting the deer herd build up, trying to get with the neighbors and make sure they're shooting does, and how many they shoot, and they tell me they're shooting 5 and they shoot 0. Right, so what happened was, this was like probably 2016, food plots got annihilated. I mean, I had nothing. I couldn't figure out what happened. So now we put up electric fences and stuff, but what happened was the population got away from us. We had so many does, it was crazy. So we alone shot 16 in 3 days in December of that year. So we were watching the bucks. I wasn't paying attention because I could tell you every buck I had from the camera data, and I keep pictures of each one so you know which ones they are. So you gotta shoot does. And the last thing, I'll get to you.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really important is your rut will suck if you have a lot of does. Because a big buck, go ahead, I'll come back to
So
that.
you're right on target with what I
Yeah.
want to ask.
Mhm.
And you made a comment about you shot 14 or 16 does
16
on
does, yeah.
December something.
15th, 20th.
Okay, so when do you shoot them? Because if you shoot 16 does in the first part of October, now you have less for them to chase.
Correct.
But you're screwing it up by going in there and chasing does and dragging them out.
Right.
So
I never
when's
shoot
the-
does. I never shoot does early season because I'm all about low pressure.
Okay, that's what I'm getting
I
at.
mean, when I go in and check my game cameras, I ride my side-by-side, slowly, putts in there, and I putts out, I see the deer off the side, they just watch me,
They don't care.
right? And then, and so here's another rule I have. Gets me September 1st, if my buddies haven't got their spots set up and trimmed out, sorry.
You're done. Yep.
September 1st comes, you're not going in there. The only reason why I go in to change game cameras, until you go in to kill. That's what's great about these setups. You set these up. You got to go in August. You've already got the stand in. Everything's trimmed out. You go in August to replace the branches. You don't go back till the right time. Yes.
Are you taking into account what types of does you shoot?
Sure. Okay. That's a great question. I never shoot matriarch does. Even if she's the one, somebody's telling me how there's a doe that was busting. Every time out there she was, right? Somebody was telling me that.
Yeah, I mean,
So you want to kill that one, but you want matriarch does. If you use the wind properly, have good entrance and exits, and camo your stands in, you can beat the does. They're just as smart as the mature bucks. They are.
It's probably
Right?
smarter.
Yeah, so you have does come out. You have one that leads them out, then she may stand back and they all come out. There'll be a doe with 2 fawns. She had 2 fawns, and there'll be some other singles or whatever. Shoot her. Shoot her subordinate doe. She's gonna have 2. Shoot her. That takes care of three deer.
No, my point is,
Leave them is what I'm saying.
because you're focusing a lot, you really understand your bucks.
Yes,
50% of your genetic herd comes from her.
correct. I don't know what kind of antlers she
Well, I
has. I
hear
wish
a
they
lot-
did. I wish they could tell us that.
A lot of guys I see, oh yeah, I shot this, I shot a monster doe. Well, you may have just shot your best breeder.
Yeah, that's great. So mature bucks wanna breed with mature does. They
And
don't.
she'll only allow him to
Yeah,
breed
right.
her.
So shooting your matriarch does is a mistake in my opinion.
Yeah.
You really want her to be there because it'll hold him in. Now let me ask this question. How do you know where your mature buck's gonna be on first when the rut starts? Okay, he's out cruising, right? He's over the neighbor's half-mile away, he's over there a mile away, he's over here, he's back on your property. He gets over there and there's high doe population, he gets in, he finds a doe in heat. 3/4 miles away, he's been there all year, now he's over there. So where's he gonna stay for the entire rut?
Over there.
Over there, because every time he gets done, there's another one, because he gets first pick, because he's big. He's a dominant animal. So holding does on your property and having good food and having good habitat, having water and minerals, if you're allowed to have minerals, all that's important. Yep.
So I'm sorry, you're shooting most of your does in December.
Yeah, so this year we had planned to take 6. And we talked about it, our deer count was down on our hunts. And we knew the neighbors had shot some and they'd shot some, so we ended up taking 0. Coyotes, you know, we talk about predators. You have to go.
Before you go there,
Yes.
how many deer per hunt do you see? When you say they're down, what do you?
Well, that one hunt I saw 26, it was freaking crazy. That was a very unusual. We typically see 10 to 12 deer a hunt, typically. Maybe a little more than that sometimes, but that's about right. But a lot of hunts this year, we're down to 5 to 7. We're seeing a lot of bucks because we have a really good buck to doe ratio. So we were seeing a lot of bucks, but we weren't seeing a lot of does. That's why we did shooting this year. We're actually trying to manage it now. Yes.
I saw some studies on mature bucks, and we're talking 6.5
Yeah.
and up.
I'd like to shoot a 6.5. I've never done that.
Well, reason is, and it made a lot of sense, and I see this on some of the properties I hunt. Once they get to that magic age, they don't have the tolerance
Right.
for
Like
herds of does and fawns. It's like a grandpa. Grandpa can't stand the grandkids running around.
Dogs will
It
ruin
stresses
their
them
hunting
out.
property too.
So they're gonna seek out areas where there isn't big groups of does and fawns. So they have their tranquility, and they'll come out and seek them during the rut, but they'll go back to those areas where they're not stressed.
It's good comments. So, game cameras. I run a lot of game cameras. I've run them high in the tree, low in the tree. Now what I do is I put them back, because I don't like to because my shoulders, right, it hurts. So now what I do is, on these setups, you see what I'll do is, I'll have the camera, there'll be maybe a big tree right here, there'll be another big tree about 5 yards back, that's where I'll put the camera. So if you get it back behind, so there's something in front of it, the deer don't notice it. I've had many bucks come up, see a camera, and literally spin it and run. So I'm sure you guys know a lot of this stuff, but.
Well, we use dummy cameras and then put a secondary camera behind it. Because that buck comes up and he'll stay back, he won't go near that camera. But we're getting pictures of him from a camera back here,
Okay.
while his neck's stretched out.
That's
with
interesting.
That other one.
Uh-huh.
A question related to your Doe Harvest, because your Doe Harvest was based on your observations.
Yes.
Your observations are limited to your property.
Correct.
So as a co-op, do you do anything more scientifically to gather input from different members?
That's a great
to
question.
Get a big picture?
There are spreadsheets and you plug in these numbers and supposedly if you take so many cameras, pictures, obvious food plots, it's supposed to tell you your herd total. I don't do that. I don't know how that can really necessarily work because weather impacts it and so on and so forth. I really don't. I do it based on what I see. For example, out in front of my house, I've got a 5-acre alfalfa plot. And on a busy year, when I have a high deer count, I'll have a lot of deer out there every night. I'm down to only 10, so I know I don't have a lot of deer based on that. So I'm doing very high-level judgments. That's all I do. I think it's difficult to do that. I understand why you're asking that question. You know?
Do you do anything dedicated for rubs? Horizontal rubs specifically, or rubs?
Oh, sure, I can talk about rubs. One thing I do, which is kind of fun, is I will take a tree on a hard edge that's maybe 2-3 inches with a tractor, and I'll pull it down and I'll tie it off, and I'll have it right at 3 feet. And it's usually going to be a country that's got pretty big branches at the top, and the bucks use that as a fighting branch. So they will use that, and I've got one that I did, it's now pretty much destroyed. It's just got a big stub there now, and they've got it all busted off. So you can do stuff like that. Horizontal rubs, I will find those out on my property. I got pictures I can pull up on my phone. I'm not sure what else to add about it. They're definitely something bucks will do, particularly old
I
bucks.
just don't know if you would intentionally place them or
So,
add that to your plan.
Well, it's just like bedding, right? It used to be, I used to pay more attention to making sure they had good places to bed, but freaking deer can bed everywhere. There's white pines, they can bed underneath the white pines. I find their beds in the snow, they're bedding all over the place. So I don't waste my time anymore doing that because I'm so busy.
By the same token,
Yeah.
they can rub anywhere. As opposed to making a rub area for attraction as opposed to a licking branch. They can rub anywhere.
I get what your question is.
In other words,
I
the
have,
time spent trying to
okay,
establish rub.
so why do bucks rub? I think that's the question you ask yourself, right? Why are they rubbing in the first place? They're doing it because they want to they're getting rid of their frustrations.
Right.
But they also do it to mark their territory. And typically they're going to rub, they say a buck will make a rub every day. So if you have, you can have a lot of rubs on your property. I've never seen a heavy concentration of rubs that would say I'd want to start trying to make mock rubs. I don't know if that was your question.
I was more making a statement that rubs are not to be established for attraction because they won't attract much because they can rub anywhere.
Yeah, I agree with that philosophy totally. So what you just said there is the way I think about it. I don't do anything to make more rubs. Matter of fact, it's really interesting. You can go from year to year to year, and you think you still have good bucks around, and there'll be hardly any rubs one year, and the next year there's everywhere. I don't know why that is. Weather, don't know.
So I have a couple pieces of property I'm working on a plan for, and Ted Miller is a big guy in horizontal rubs, and he claims that you can dictate large bucks to horizontal rubs if done correctly. And I don't know. That's the only place I've seen it. It's the only place I've heard.
Yeah. So I do believe that there can be a tree that's in the right, perfect spot that all the bucks will rub their antlers on. I mean, it's just like the right licking branch. I mean, when my setups are done correctly, and every buck that comes through that woods will hit it.
Yeah.
Right? So why are they hitting it? Because of the scent, and so can you have that on a rub? Yeah.
So do you feel you could add to your system if they rubbed, on your post?
Not needed.
Because, they do
You could,
make a lot of sense.
but
Do you ever see a...
they don't hold up very well.
Do you ever see, a buck rub?
Okay.
He licks,
Yep,
rubs,
okay.
licks, rubs.
Yep,
So he's
okay.
leaving huge amounts of scent on a rub.
Yeah, so I did a property in Missouri, 400 acre, a doctor had 400 acres, and he brought me out there. I was there for 4 days. And we did some setups. He brought me back the next year. And there was a setup like this that had big rubs all around. It's the only time I've ever seen it was in Missouri.
So right now, I go up north and I grab white cedars and I drill the holes and do the same thing with basswood. And so I have a rub and a scrape. And it was just fun to make it happen.
Yep.
But I don't know, if you had your let's say you've used 4 cedar posts from up north, white cedar, not red down here, and it just seemed to be attracted to that. white cedar. So they rub every one you put
Yeah.
out. So you have all that scent there, don't you feel it could add to your system or not?
No. Just because I've got so much activity, I don't know how it could get any better. The other thing is I've done I've done what you just described. I've gone out with a postal digger, put posts in the ground and put them on, and the branches always get broken, and they didn't work like these, because these spring, when it's locked in, it's amazing how much pressure there is. You wouldn't think a T-post would actually spin, but it does. That's one of the things, for some reason, the bucks love it, because it fights them when they're pushing on it. I've even drilled in live trees and put the raw plastic rods that you mark driveways with in the winter for snow, and zip tied branches, and they never worked. Didn't work. I've done so many different approaches.
Okay, have you ever tried sumac?
I haven't.
It's pretty.
That's a real soft wood, I think.
So you see it on the side of the road,
Yeah.
they rub right there.
They make a lot of
at
rubs
night.
on sumac, yes.
Right, so it's a soft wood like basswood. So
Yeah.
if you take a sumac, which grow up, so they're not attractive to scraping.
I don't know.
And you hang it down like you're doing your
I don't know if
basswoods,
I don't know if they snap, I don't
you
know,
will-
I'll have to
they
look
love-
at that, that's a great
they
question.
love- First off, a lot of deer eat I
Yes.
like the berries or whatever on
Yeah.
the top, the seed head. But them will be gone, and then you just have them, chewed up ends. So you get a nice sumac with all the branches, you dangle that where you want it, like you're doing your basswoods.
Yes, so my measure of success is, can I kill a buck over that
It's
setup?
just as good as sumac, or good as
Yeah,
basswood,
I'll have to try that.
because it's the same soft, spongy porous that it holds scent.
I'll have to try that.
But you brought up a point where you're saying basswood doesn't have a scent, so it made me think, does sumac have a scent? Because it sure does attract deer.
Yeah, they like to eat
More
it
than,
and make
more
rubs
than
on
the
it.
oak branches. So
Yeah.
I mean, the
Yeah.
two number ones that I found are basswood and sumac.
Yeah, I want to reinforce that Rich actually suggested to me, and I did a big staghorn sumac. There's lots of it along Kane Road. I have a fair amount in my frontage. Rich helped me post hole dig, plant a big arching sumac, staghorn sumac. Deer went crazy rubbing it. And I'm sure they used the
And we
branches.
zip tie branches on an angle down. So, like you said, the branch, and basswood branches kind of naturally
Yes.
grow down.
Yep, if you flip them
So
over,
you
they
put,
do,
so
yes.
you I think that arch helps. It attracts the arch, so you make these things and they kind of look like a mushroom.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the things that
I'll
attract
have
the
to,
sight, the visual
go
thing.
look closer at sumac to just.
But sumac goes straight up,
See.
it doesn't attract deer for scraping, but they love rubbing it because
Yeah.
it leaves,
So-
because it leaves so much
Yeah.
scent, so.
So it really
You gotta
is,
tip them upside down and just let
Yeah.
them dangle and they love, or I'd put them in trees, drilled them in trees and have them down.
so the
but
question I'd be
They'll break
asking
off
is,
because they get brittle.
what are you
real quick.
doing with those, in what location? If you're putting it near a food plot where there's a lot of deer around, you're gonna get activity on it, which is
No,
good.
just
If you're
setups like
putting this
yours.
back in the cover somewhere
no.
and it's working, then it's
These are
similar
kill
to this.
setups. I don't hunt food plots, but,
Yeah,
except for to kill
Interesting.
does.
okay. Good input.
Another thing around here is if you want rubs, speckled alder works wonderfully, grows really tall, all scraped up all the time. Well, we got wet soil down here.
What were you gonna say about the coyote?
Coyote management. So you ask yourself, how many coyotes do I have? Right? Coyotes, to me, I don't like coyotes at all. And I'm at number 6 right now that I've shot off my property, and number 7's gonna go tonight. So how do I do that? Well, I put out a deer carcass that I picked up. I don't know if it's necessarily legal to do that. but
It
I'm not
is.
doing anything illegal. I think it is. So
It is.
right along the road there, I take it in, I drag it in, I put it out back in there. It takes 2 weeks before they'll come in, typically 2 weeks. Then I put game cameras on that send me a signal. Okay? So middle of the night, I get a couple dings. I know his pattern, now he's coming in. Now, you can get sleepless nights, but it's fun. Then you gotta have a night scope, and then you go out and shoot him. So I've got one right now coming in. I thought they were done, but there's one more. I got bobcats coming in. I don't know what to think about bobcats. I haven't tried trapping them or anything, but they're kind of cool.
They're fawn killers.
Yeah, I know they are. Yeah.
They kill for fun.
But coyotes, you have to manage them. And dogs, I've had a real problem with dogs. You know, you get 2 dogs keep coming through your property, running the deer out, it is a problem. Your big bucks will leave. And that's one thing I haven't figured out, and I study this a lot, is why is it that some of my older bucks that I pass, and I know made it through into December, disappear, right? And they don't come back. Where are they going? I know there's big expanses of forest north of me about 3-4 miles. Are they going there because there's less pressure? You were mentioning that. That's one thing I don't know. And then others, the real tall 9-point that we took this year, somebody shot him last year across the back. And we called him Scar. That was his name, Scar, because he had a big cut across his back. Right? We're glad that they didn't kill him because we got him this year. He's a dandy. He's just a dandy. He must be about 150.
A lot of times those big ones will find Grandma Jones's house. She has 2 acres that's full of briars behind the garage that she's never been in 50 years.
And nobody goes in there.
He's tucked up behind there.
Could be.
And that's where he's living.
Yeah,
I find a lot of them like that.
I don't know, I got a lot of stuff to offer. I've got 5 1-acre alfalfa plots, I grow corn, I grow soybeans. The electric fence, 12 acres a year. It's a lot of work.
What is your ratio for food to land?
20 acres planted, over out of 250, so about 8%, I guess. Yeah. Yes?
What's your knowledge of what coyote presence will do to a population of deer on your property?
Well,
in terms of scaring deer, harvesting deer, eating them, like how often?
Yeah, okay, I have found almost every year, in the last 3-4 years, fawn legs, right? Coyotes kill a fawn and you find a leg laying there. What the hell, it's in the food plot or wherever it is. So they're definitely killing. I think that if you watch your deer herd, okay, so here's something that happens. If you have small, what I call kill plots, you're hunting it and the deer leave before dark. Why do they do that? Okay. They want to get out to the bigger fields where they can look for the coyotes, because the coyotes are coming. So coyotes will pressure your deer, absolutely. And the more of them, you know, so I shot 7 last year. I'm hopefully going to get 7 tomorrow night, or tonight, if I get over to my house tonight. Yeah.
Jeremy, what's your knowledge of the coyotes?
Kill them all.
No. What
like
has
that.
been your experience in the area?
Like populations?
Population, and are you seeing deer carcasses that they
Yeah,
have?
so, yeah, I've seen deer carcasses, I've seen them chasing deer, all the time. They're really-
So one of the
really
effects
happy
is
chasing,
scaring
you know,
the deer
them
away
out
during
back.
hunting season.
Well, there's a couple things to this. It'll make your deer way more nervous, so they're not going to be naturally moving in the day. They're going to be a lot more cautious.
Okay.
So that's a problem. I want that mature buck to feel like he can just walk right out there and come into my ambush locations in daylight so I can shoot him. You know, so
Yeah.
they definitely have an impact.
Yeah, I'm running 3 cell cams right now all winter, and I put 2 roadkills out, and it took 2 weeks, and I'm getting cell cams of deer every night. The 4 coyotes moved in and ate those deer in 2 nights. It
Oh,
took
wow.
2 weeks.
Wow.
But when those coyotes moved in, my deer sightings on my trail cams shut down, and I'm getting
Wow.
pictures of running deer. And
That's great.
this just happened in the last 2 weeks here. And then I was on vacation, so I wasn't visiting my farm. But I've caught, and I got some traps. I got 4 nights in a row I caught a coon, so I had to go there. And so I've been there every day for the last 5 days. Not one cell pick of a coyote in the last week. But I've had the hounds have been coming through, you know, 3 or 4 times. I've got the coyote hounds going through. So where I'm at, just over here, I mean, they're getting hunted a lot. And so that's just what I'm seeing.
That's
Yeah,
not a lot.
those guys in our area hit those coyotes real hard.
Yeah, and I don't think, I mean, I have plenty of them on my farm, but compared to like my dad, where he lives in Salem, and just the sign, the droppings, the tracks, and just while hunting, he's seeing coyotes at a rate that's 3 and 4 times the rate of what we're seeing
That's amazing.
here. So
Yeah, last night I had a bobcat, fox, and coyote on the same, and there's nothing left, they've got it gone. I really need to go find another roadkill, but I'm not big enough to load it in the truck myself, so gotta find somebody to help me.
Knife and a saw, buddy.
Oh, that's true.
Knife and a saw.
Well, yeah, I try to be conspicuous, you know, you're picking up deer carts.
A cart,
What's this
a
guy doing?
roadkill deer. Hard to
I
load
don't,
it
I'm
up.
not a criminal, I don't wanna be a
I put it
criminal.
in my sled and I use a ramp and I just slide it up.
I don't really think that's an issue.
Yeah, I don't know what would happen if a state patrolman came by when I was throwing a deer cart.
All you have to do is go on the app on DNR and you just say roadkill deer and what you're using it for. It takes like 1 minute.
Oh, you can do that?
Yeah, now technically you're not supposed to take it out of the county.
Right,
I
right.
So-
have the app if you want it, I have it on my.
Oh,
Yeah, it's,
Great.
and you
I'd love
can,
to get
you
that from
can,
you.
you're
Yeah.
just not allowed to do spotted fawns. I don't think you're allowed to do bear.
okay, I didn't know that.
But you're allowed to do like all kinds of roadkill. And you can just say for trapping bait and,
Yeah, I mean, what I'd like to do is get 3 or 4 carcasses and put them under a tarp and then use them during the winter. Because during the breeding season, which is February, March, is when they're really on the move.
Yeah.
And my philosophy overall is if I can kill 6 or 7 coyotes every winter, when the fawns drop, that means there's 6 or 7 less coyotes killing fawns. Now, next fall, there'll be more because they have litters, right? They call them litters.
Hopefully those 6 or 7 are females.
Any other questions? Yeah, so that was really thorough.